In this video, we're going to create the seeking projectile that goes from the slime attack to the enemy that's hit and applies the slime debuff. I'm going to go over to the VFX reference prefabs folder and locate the slime projectile. I'll click and drag that into the scene and take a look at it. We'll notice that it looks very much like our slime debuff. A lot of the settings between the two will be the same. Now that we know what we're making, I'm going to right click on the slime projectile and delete it from the scene. Then I'm going to create a new one by going to Create, Particle System. And I'll rename this Slime Projectile. I'll start by going down to the renderer and changing the default material. I'm going to go ahead and choose Slime Ball Additive. As we'll recall, this is a texture sheet, so I'm going to go and add the texture sheet animation module. We can see this has 4 rows and 4 columns, so for the X and Y properties, I'm going to write 4. Next, I'm going to go back up to the top and start filling in the rest of these properties. I can leave the duration at 5 seconds with looping and play on awake. I'm going to leave the start lifetime at 5 seconds. However, I'm going to reduce the speed to 0. I'm also going to leave the start size without any rotation, and I'll change the scaling mode to shape. One thing worth noting is that unlike the stink projectile, which emitted based on distance, this projectile is going to stick to a more traditional emission. What we're not going to do is have any rate of time for our emission, so I'm going to set the property for rate to 0. Instead, you may have noticed the duration of the particle system is 5 seconds, and the lifetime of our particle is also 5 seconds. You probably could have guessed that I'm going to click the plus icon and create a single burst of 1. This way, the particle lives the entire duration of the particle system. I don't want a shape for the emission, so I'm just going to uncheck the shape module. Next, I'm going to apply a size over lifetime module, as well as a rotation over lifetime module. For the size over lifetime, I'm going to have a range of 2 to 0. I'm going to move the initial keyframe down to 0, and I'm going to leave the end keyframe at 2. However, I'm going to bring the end keyframe to the left to about the 25% mark, or 0.25. So now what we see is the particle grows and appears, and then stays for the duration. Next, for the rotation over lifetime module, I'm going to change the angular velocity property to be a curve. This curve is going to go between 180 and negative 180. Just like we saw with the slime debuff, I want to create a sort of agitation motion where the object rotates one way and then halfway through starts rotating the other way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by taking the first keyframe and dragging it all the way down to negative 180. Then I'm going to add a keyframe to the very end and click and drag all the way to the top to positive 180. Now we can see the particle rotating one direction and then the other. Now we may have noticed that the animation of this projectile is rather choppy. We can definitely see that this particle is a static image being rotated through a sprite sheet. Now, if I wanted this to look more realistic, I could decrease the life of this particle. Since right now it's showing all 16 frames of this particle's animation cycle over a 5-second duration, we can see how choppy it is. If the life were to only be, say, 1 second, however, the animation would be much smoother. However, we want a particle to be on the screen for the whole time. So instead of changing the lifetime, I'm instead going to change how many times this texture sheet animates over the duration of a particle. Right now, it's showing all 16 frames only once over 5 seconds. If I increase the cycles to be 8, all 16 frames will be drawn 8 times over 5 seconds, and the whole thing becomes much smoother. Now that that's done, the only thing left for our slime projectile is to add the slime projectile script. I'm going to click Add Component, Scripts, and then Slime Projectile. Underneath the projectile properties, we have the speed and the projectile radius. I'll leave both of those the way they are. We also need references to a slime debuff and a slime hit. I'm not going to worry about this right now, as we're going to put this all together in the next scene when we fully integrate this into the game. For now, I'm just going to turn my slime projectile into a prefab. I'm going to select my VFX folder underneath my prefabs folder, and then I'm going to click and drag my slime projectile game object down to the project view. As I had said, in the next video, we're going to put this whole thing together in our main scene and test it out.